welcome to lesson 3 of module 2, which is tapping. All right, so tapping, you may be wondering what that is, which I was too. When I first got offered a free session on tapping, I had no idea what to expect. And what I first understood when I got kind of an intro to it is that it was kind of based on acupuncture. And I had tried acupuncture before and had mixed results. So I was still super skeptical, but I was like, whatever, it's free, right? It totally blew me away in the first session. This is something that I now do every week with my tapping coach. Although you don't need to have a coach to do it, I found that it actually works with a technique I'm about to show you. And what it does is that it helps me when I'm in that yellow zone, creeping into the orange zone, or even if I'm not in that moment, it helps me reflect back on some episode that was highly stressful and what my thoughts were about it. So how to think about my stress without getting stressed. And for some people, it may take a few sessions. For me, it was the very first session, but I think I was in that mindset. So definitely give it a couple tries before you say absolutely no to it. No, keep an open mind to it. I did, and I'm so thankful I did. Here's what we're going to cover in lesson 3. What is tapping? I know it sounds crazy, but tapping, emotional freedom technique. What it does is it uses acupressure to disable the stress response. We're going to go through a run through. I'll go through some science, kind of some neuroscience and some cortisol studies. And then we're going to do an interview with Dr. Jill Wener, who is my tapping coach and introduced me to this topic. Our mind becomes more spacious, more open, and happier as we move past our avoidance and denial to see what is true. Joseph Goldstein. This is what tapping has helped a ton with me. And Joseph Goldstein is actually a meditator who I love very much. I would definitely check him out. He's on the 10% Happier app, and he also runs the Insight Meditation Society. And he's got a bunch of Dharma talks if you want to listen to him. He's amazing. So tapping, what is it? As you can see here, these are, I guess, some Chinese acupressure points, and it uses these points to elicit the response. So this is the basics. So you can see that first one there is the karate chop point. So what you do with this is you'll say a statement. And by the way, this is all written out in your workbook, so you can follow along there. But you use the side of your hand, the karate chop point, and you start there, and then you'll state whatever is stressing you out. And then you're kind of done with that, and then you move on to the top of the head. You tap the top of your head. Then you tap right here, kind of at your eyebrow, where your eyebrow turns into not eyebrow. You kind of tap there, and as you tap it, you'll sometimes feel a little spot that just resonates with you, and that's where I tend to tap. And I use 2 fingers to tap. So tap, tap, tap. And then you just keep talking about your stress as you move to the kind of outer corner of your eyebrow. It's kind of hard to see there. It's not really at the corner of the eye. It's kind of the corner of the eyebrow here and just behind it for me. And you can kind of tap around the general area. You'll kind of start to feel a spot that works for you as you talk. And then go under the eye. And again, you're talking through your stress here. I find it's best to talk out loud. I have not ever tried it silently thinking through. I kind of, even if I'm by myself, I'll just kind of whisper it. There's something about speaking out loud about your stress that kind of makes it true. For example, there is a difference between thinking I love you and saying I love you. And I think the same is true about your stress, which is why when I tap, I say things out loud. It kind of makes it true, and it brings something into the highest level of communication, even as you hear it yourself. And then, let's review. Karate chop, done. Head, inner, outer, under. And then you go to under the nose here, kind of just above your Cupid's bow, right at your philtrum, below your nose. Just tap, tap, tap. And then the next spot is below your chin, right here. And then right here, she's pointing kind of on both sides. You can kind of tap both sides, by the way. All of these you can do tap, 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 both sides. I only ever do one hand, and I find it's just as effective. So then you can kind of go both hands or open or kind of pound your chest like this. That works too. And then she's not showing you her armpit there. It's kind of like under your armpit here. So kind of at the bra line, or just where you can kind of tap like this. And then, as I mentioned, you skip the karate chop point as you're talking through your stress, and then you go back up here. So why the heck does this work? So here's the science. This was an article released in the journal Psychological Trauma, and this study was actually a replication of another study, so they copied it. And that study reported a decrease in anxiety, depression, and overall symptoms. And then also talked about dropping cortisol levels, which is a hormone related to stress. So the study I'm quoting here replicated the cortisol levels that improved after a 60-minute tapping session, which was statistically significantly higher or improved based on psychoeducation or no treatment. Psychoeducation is sometimes like that talk therapy and stuff. So this doesn't necessarily correlate to an increase in symptoms. You may not actually feel less stressed. They reported feeling about the same drop into stress as compared to the education group, but their cortisol levels or their hormones actually showed a huge change. Cortisol is a hormone that is known to rise in response to stress, and if chronic, leads to weight gain, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, osteoporosis, depression, all kinds of things like that. And I believe these were measured in salivary samples. This is another one that with neuroimaging where they use the fMRI or functional MRI machine to look at people's brains. So this is evidence from acupuncture research that indicates that stimulating these areas increases the body's natural endorphins and natural opioids. Plus it increases neurotransmitters like serotonin and GABA, which create that feel-good feeling, while also regulating cortisol, like we talked on that last slide. And these biological changes help in that counter conditioning process. So it's a way to talk about your stress without getting stressed or actually re-traumatizing. The MRIs also looked at the midbrain and what kind of activity was going on there. The midbrain is where sensory input, like all the stuff that we're taking in from our environment, is matched against patterns of threat. And that can kick off that sympathetic alarm response. But what these fMRI studies showed about tapping, which is so awesome, is that it showed a significant decrease in the area of the brain with the stimulation of the acupressure points. The relaxation state increases blood flow to that neocortex, or that kind of higher, more rational brain that we think of, where rational thinking lives, and opens up those neural pathways for processing that information, and opens that up to even changing your behavior through that limbic and amygdala getting less reactive and more into the neocortex. One thing that I found when I was going through tapping is describing how I feel. Sometimes it seems very basic. So in the center of this chart, which you can find in your roadmap associated with this course, is this feeling wheel. And sometimes you feel very restricted to the center of that. So I feel angry, I feel afraid, I feel happy, I feel sad. And sometimes that doesn't quite feel right. And if you're not very in touch with your emotions, and this is the emotional freedom technique, sometimes really putting a fine point on how you're feeling can do wonders for resolving your issues. So I've provided this in there. You can review it in case you say, I feel angry, but that doesn't feel right. It's like right next to anger. Maybe it's something like, I feel mad, I feel furious. Yeah, I'm like more than angry, I am furious. And saying something out loud, you'll notice it almost suddenly seems to diffuse. Okay, now we're ready for the interview with Dr. Jill Wener. So welcome everyone. This is Dr. Jill Wener. She is a physician, a meditation and tapping coach, happens to be my tapping coach, and an anti-racism activist. So thank you, Jill.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk about tapping.
Yeah, so I learned about tapping from you. I had no idea what it was. I was very skeptical in our first meeting. I had no idea. So I guess just real quick, what is tapping to you, and how did you get into it?
Tapping to me is the secret sauce. I had been meditating for about probably 6 or 7 years. I'd already become a meditation teacher before I heard of tapping for the first time. And I heard of it I was teaching my meditation course at a medical conference for women physicians. And the other guest speakers, in addition to me, did a whole presentation on tapping and other similar modalities. And I thought it sounded really cool. I didn't know much about it, but it was a psychiatrist and a psychologist who worked with PTSD patients at the VA. So my first exposure to it was actually very clinical. And then I met someone here in Atlanta where I'm based who is a tapping practitioner, and she helped me through some things I was going through in my life. And in one session, I felt better than I had in months. So I was all in, and I did a package with her, and then kept going with that. And eventually she offered if I wanted her to train me to become a practitioner. So that's how I got into actually doing the sessions myself.
That's awesome. So I was, like I said, I was a skeptic and I didn't really know how it works. So what's your understanding like about how it works or what you were told in that session?
The way that I explain it's so the general concept is activating the parasympathetic nervous system and calming the body down. What I've learned is that, and the way I understand it, is that by tapping on the acupressure points, it's sending calming signals to the stress centers of the brain. The hippocampus is the part of the brain that's always on alert, looking for things that may or may not be dangerous. And then that sends the message to the amygdala of whether or not it's time to have the fight or flight. So it sends calming signals to the amygdala and decreases the connection from the amygdala. Calming signals to the hippocampus, decreases the connection from the hippocampus to the amygdala, so everything is tamped down. And it's rewiring the way our brains perceive and process and respond to previously stressful triggers or stimuli.
Yeah, and that's one thing I found that was really helpful about this technique is that you're able to talk about your stress without getting stressed. And when you're able to send those calming signals, you can really understand what is truly stressing you out, which sometimes you're just not aware of. So it really brings that to the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're all stressed out, we're kind of in this like walled off mode. And as we're tapping, we're kind of opening the mind up to receive messages from our subconscious that are covered up by that stress and by that ego voice and the fight or flight response. So my tapping clients and myself, when I'm tapping, will be like, oh, I'm really mad at this because I'm angry at myself. I'm not mad at her or him. This is why, this reminds me, it's because of my second grade teacher did this. So these beautiful aha moments that are facilitated by the tapping practitioner, but are really coming from within the person who's tapping, which I love.
Yeah. And one thing that I think is great about tapping is I learned it one-on-one with you. And then we've been doing it, through Zoom and FaceTime and stuff. But then, I do it separately, just when I'm stressed out, you can just sit there and do the tapping all on your own without anybody else once you learn it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think you've done the same thing, right? Kind of on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two main concepts of when to use tapping. One is symptom management, which is I'm feeling very fill in the blank right now, and it can calm you down. And then there's also, you can use tapping to address self-limiting beliefs, to heal from trauma, from PTSD, make major life decisions. So there's kind of the bigger, deeper stuff, and there's also the symptom management. The symptom management stuff is super, super easy to do, and you can get a little bit deeper as well, but it's usually helpful if you've had some experience like you have doing the one-on-one session, so you can be aware of how do I listen for those aha moments, and when do I pause, and when do I shift to a different emotion. But the symptom management is incredible. And people, you can do that. You can Google or go on YouTube and say tapping for anxiety. It's also called the emotional freedom technique. So, or EFT. So you can just Google whatever emotion you're feeling and find a free tapping meditation, or through your course, follow the instructions through that. And it's pretty basic. It's just nice to have seen it done or illustrated a couple times so that you have a sense of what you're doing, because otherwise it might feel a little awkward or foreign.
Okay, so maybe we could just do a quick run through of that. So we start with the karate chop point, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then one quick question. So why do you do this to start with, and then you don't do that anymore? And then you just kind of do cycles of like body tapping. Like, how does that work?
This is called the setup, the karate chop point. And this is where we do what's called a setup statement. So this is this initial thing that we say, that's something like, let's say you're tapping on anxiety about a job interview. So even though I'm feeling anxious about my job interview, I love and accept myself, or some variation of accept and forgive myself, or accept myself completely. You say that 3 times. So that's the setup statement. And that's kind of, and the specifics of the meridians, they're very fluid. You don't have to do a very specific protocol. You just tap through all of them. But this one here, it's kind of getting you in the right mindset to do the tapping. It's calming to do it here. And I almost think of it like acknowledging the demon and setting it free. If you have some hidden resistance to tapping or to healing or to feeling better that might self-sabotage as you're doing the process, it kind of is like, all right, so even though I'm feeling these things, that's cool. And it starts you off in a mindset of positivity. So you do the setup statement 3 times, and you can keep it super basic when you're by yourself. So even though I'm anxious about my job interview, I love and accept myself, say that 3 times. And then you put the karate chop point away and you tap through the main tapping points. Both hands, one hand, it doesn't matter, but the ones that are in the midline, you don't want to do them over here. You do want to stay in the midline. So up here, inner corner of the eyebrow, side of the eye, under the eye, under the nose, chin, collarbone, and then under the arm. So those are the main points. And then you just go right back up. But if you have a new emotion that comes up, let's say you're tapping on anger and then all of a sudden you're overwhelmed by sadness, and the sadness is super strong, then you start over again here, even though I'm feeling sad about fill in the blank.
Okay.
You always want to keep a little notepad next to you to write down how strong your emotion is before you start. And every time you check in, every few cycles of going through the points, just to see where you're at. And if you have any aha moments, you can write those down too. And if a new emotion comes up, so that let's say the anger has gone down to a 4 out of 10, but now all of a sudden the sadness comes up and it's an 8 out of 10, start tapping on the sadness and then check back in with the anger once the sadness is gone. And often the anger will have decreased or completely resolved, because underneath that anger was the sadness that we couldn't even really see.
Okay. Yeah.
Like layers to it.
Yeah. And then I have, in the workbook, I have some of those like places to write that down. Like you start at a 10, you go down to a 1, and then you kind of like go up and down on the scale. So, yeah. Okay.
It's really important to measure, to keep that objective measure of where your emotion is. And if you're not comfortable with the numbers, have some sort of scale, like the smiley face, frowny face scale, something where you can judge where you're at, because it's so effective that people will be like, was I mad? Because it's not completely consuming me, but I guess it's still there. People will often be like, I don't even know how to frame it because it's so much better, but how could it have been gone? How could it be gone so quickly?
Yeah.
So just make sure you do keep track of it, because that will be helpful.
Yeah. It sounds like it keeps you mindful of your body state and your mental state.
Yeah.
How it was to how it is now, so you can kind of track that progress and
Mm-hmm.
just know where you came from to know where you're going, so that you can like achieve your goals of being less stressed out.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, should we just do a quick run through as if
Sure.
I'm your kind of patient, client, whatever?
Yes, absolutely. What emotion would you like to tap on?
Let's just tap on like, I'm stressed out because I am working way too much, but I can't do anything about it.
Okay. Is there an emotion that goes deeper than stressed out?
Fatigued, tired, overwhelmed.
Which feels, and if all you can come up with was stressed out, and if you're at home and you're doing it and you're stressed out is what's coming to mind, that's okay too. But stressed out isn't really an emotion. I mean, it is, but we want to get as like detailed and specific with everything that we tap on, because that will be the most helpful. So do you think overwhelmed?
Overwhelmed and tired, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. Which one's
Tired.
Tired?
Yeah, just tired.
Okay. How strong is the fatigue?
I'd say right now it's about a 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where do you feel that fatigue in your body?
I kind of feel it like in my chest and my stomach area, kind of like when I think about the stress. So the tiredness I feel is like up here. And then the stress goes down. So I'm like tired, like I just want to like sleep. But then when I think I can't do this, I'm just like, it just kind of pushes it down here with the stress.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start tapping them. And often if there's like a hard time figuring out exactly what the emotion is, just start with the best you can do, and the true emotion will come out. So, so we'll tap at the karate chop point.
Okay.
Even though I have this 7 out of 10 fatigue in my head.
Even though I have this 7 out of 10 fatigue in my head.
Because I've been working so much and I have so many other things to do.
Because I've been working so much and I have so many other things to do.
I love and accept myself.
I love and accept myself.
Even though I have this 7 out of 10 fatigue and I feel it in my head.
Even though I have this 7 out of 10 fatigue and I feel it in my head.
I love and accept myself completely.
I love and accept myself completely.
And we're going to keep this like pretty basic so people watching can model it independently.
Okay.
Even though I feel a 7 out of 10 fatigue in my head,
Even though I feel a 7 out of 10 fatigue in my head,
because I've just been working so much and there's so much going on right now.
because I've just been working so much and there's so much going on right now.
I love and accept myself completely.
I love and accept myself completely.
All right, now top of the head. I'm tired.
I'm tired.
All this fatigue.
All this fatigue.
It's a 7 out of 10.
It's a 7 out of 10.
I feel it in my head.
I feel it in my head.
All this fatigue.
All this fatigue.
I'm tired.
I'm tired.
I'm exhausted.
I'm exhausted.
All this fatigue.
All this fatigue.
I've been working so much recently.
I've been working so much recently.
And there's no end in sight.
And there's no end in sight.
I have so much more to do.
I have so much more to do.
But not that much time to do it.
And not that much time to do it.
All I want to do is sleep.
All I want to do is sleep.
All this fatigue.
All this fatigue.
I'm so tired.
I'm so tired.
So tired.
So tired.
Okay, so let's pause. Take a deep breath. Now, if you're doing this at home, you're going to like check in with yourself on the severity level. But Leslie, how strong is your fatigue as we're tapping?
The fatigue itself, actually, I was able to kind of almost separate it out between the fatigue and the stress. So the fatigue itself doesn't feel so strong. It's like a 4 now. And, but there was something, I forget what it was. You said like I'll have all these things to do. I was like feeling tired in my head. And then I felt it like go down and I'm like, yes, I have so much to do.
Okay. So that really resonated.
It isn't bothering me. It's just I think all the things to do, that's definitely bothering me more than the fatigue.
Okay. So maybe a little bit more overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think so.
Then, and I don't know if you noticed, but you sighed a couple times while you were tapping.
Yeah.
If you're at home, signs that it's working are your signs that you're activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So sighing, yawning, tears. I don't know if that's specifically parasympathetic, but that's an emotional release. And I've had people stomachs gurgle. A couple of my clients belch when they're releasing a bunch of stuff. So the sky's the limit, and nothing's too weird in terms of what happens when you're tapping. But generally, it's sighing and yawning and maybe some tears.
Okay. I've done the tearing.
Yeah, it's good. It's beautiful. I love it when my clients cry. I have a box of Kleenex by here. This is what I tap. And I've gotten to the point now where I can tap on myself on some very deep things, and I'm like sitting in my room crying by myself. So that works really well. So what we would do now is, you said your fatigue is down to a 4, but what you're feeling more now is overwhelm. So how strong is the overwhelm?
It's maybe a 6.
6, and you're
feeling.
feeling.
I feel almost better now because I know the fatigue isn't the problem; it's the overwhelm. So that makes me feel better. So
okay,
yeah.
And that's in your chest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chest and stomach. Yeah.
Chest and stomach. So what we would do now is tap on the overwhelm, and I don't know
overwhelm. Okay.
how much time we have, but it would be something like, even though I'm feeling 6 out of 10 overwhelm in my chest and stomach, because I have so much to do.
Mm-hmm.
I've been working so much. I love and accept myself. And then you would just tap through all this overwhelm. I'm overwhelmed. So overwhelmed. It's in my stomach and my chest. It's a 6 out of 10. I have so much to do. I've been working so much. And you would just go through whatever it is that you're feeling about the overwhelm, and you can throw in whatever you want. I sometimes get creative with my clients and throw in some extra things that they haven't quite said out loud, but that I'm kind of intuitively feeling with them. But you don't have that doesn't have to play into this. You can keep it super basic and feel a lot better.
So when you're doing this, how do you know when you're done? Like, is it, how do you stop? Like,
ideally, you get yourself down to a 0.
0.
When people are down to like a 3, 2, 1 or 0, then you can start tapping in positivity. So it's like, I feel the fatigue leaving my body, so much more energized. I have plenty of time to sleep. And you tap in, but we don't want to tap in positive things. People sometimes are thrown off why we say the negative so much. We have to be stimulating that negative emotion as we tap in order for it to have its benefit. So this is not positive affirmation time, and I love positive affirmations, but this is not the time for it.
Okay.
Once the body is calmed down enough, then we can infuse some positivity if we want to. We don't have to. That kind of like seals in the feeling of goodness. So if they're like, oh, I'm so energized, or I'm feeling so much more confident, or I can do anything, then it's like, I can do anything. I can take, and so you use what you have come up with yourself or what your client has come up with to tap in some positivity. Ideally, you get down to a 0, but if you started off at a 10 out of 10 anxiety about something, and you get to a point where you're like, okay, I can breathe now and I can go about my day, but you're only down to a 2 or 3, that's okay too. It's symptom reduction. So you're kind of in charge with yourself if you're doing this to manage acute symptoms of pain or emotions. It doesn't have to be just emotions. It can be about pain as well. So that's kind of how you know you're done if you're feeling better. And I'll have certain people that they say it's still a 4, but they're not sobbing anymore. They're not crying anymore. They're much more calm. And I'll sometimes shift into positive mode sooner than I would have, because they're almost just not ready to say that they're not feeling that anymore, but what they're showing me in their emotional response is so much more calm.
Okay. And then for me, I found it always like, even when I'm alone, I'll just kind of whisper it out loud. Have you found that saying it out loud versus in your head makes any difference?
I think it's best to say it out loud. I'll definitely have people when I'm tapping with a group, usually through Zoom, that people who don't tap along and say it out loud will not get the same benefits. So if you're by yourself, let's say you're next to your spouse and you're in bed and they're sleeping and you can't sleep because you're anxious about something, you can whisper it or mouth it, and that's okay too. If you just think it's okay, but I think it's best if you're actually in some way vocalizing it, even if it's mouthed or whispered vocalizing.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much. If people want to contact you and get like one-on-one sessions or more information, where can we find you?
My website, jillwener.com, and it's spelled Wener. So JILLWENER.com. And there's information about meditation and tapping and the anti-racist work I do as well. The sessions are great. You can do them one-on-one, but the real impact is when you do a package, because you really can work through major issues that you don't have the time to get really into just one session. But most people get a lot of relief from just one session, but to really go deep, a package is really helpful.
Yeah, I think you said something like 3 sessions, like, because when I first saw you, I was already like doing like self-work all day long, and then I saw you. So I think that's why that first session was just so powerful. I was in a place to open up to it. But I kind of wonder, if I hadn't been in that emotional place to open up, I wonder if I would have taken a few more sessions to really work.
Right. Well, because when you and I first met, you had that 3-pack that was part of the retreat you came on, and I don't know, I offer like 1, and then I offer 8, 12, and 16, but that was a special thing for the retreat. So yeah, I'm curious to know, because you did so great with it, and then we were able to keep working together, because that was already part of the.
Yeah. And I've kept doing it after the 3-pack for, I don't know how many I've done so far, but a bunch.
It's the best. I love it so much. I still tap, like, nothing for me is better than tapping with my coach, because I don't have to think about it. And so I think you had asked me to talk about how do you tap moving forward. A lot of people want to know how do you fit it into your day? Like, my meditation practice is 20 minutes twice a day. That's what you do. With the tapping, you can do it as needed. So if you're having a strong emotion, you do it. You could do it 10 minutes every day in the morning. You could tap through, let's say you're having some lingering resentment towards somebody in your life, a difficult friendship that ended, or a parent, or an ex-spouse or somebody, and you're having emotions about that kind of all the time, then spend 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day tapping through that. So that's more of you still want to do it on something you feel emotions about, but you don't have to wait until you're completely overwhelmed with that emotion. Mm-hmm. So I love, and I'm human, so I have strong emotions, and I'll just be like, I want to be mad right now. So I don't tap on it. But when I finally do, it's like annoying for me to pay my coach to do it, because I know how to do it, but she's so good. And And it's just like takes all, because I tap with people all day long. So it's so nice for me to not have to think about it and just have her take the reins.
Mm-hmm.
So there is something really special about having someone else do it for you.
Yeah, I've done it both ways for me too, and I have to say, like, doing it alone is nice because I'm more of a secluded, like, never show my feelings kind of person. But in private, I can kind of open up, and then just like no one's there to like see me cry or like suddenly realize that I'm the a-hole here, or something like that. And then so that's nice to do because I can be fully honest, way more honest with myself than I am without tapping. So tapping gives me a ton of honesty with myself. And then when I do tapping with you, you like read my face, and then you add in like, maybe, are you feeling this? Are you feeling that? And I'll be like, oh my God, you get me, like a suddenly like, it'll just hit suddenly, like things I didn't even see. So
it's so cool. And I've been using it so much during COVID because the meditation I teach is this like intensive course. And once you're done with it, you know how to meditate, but it's not, as you know, you practice the meditation that I teach. It's not something I can guide people through or give a little sample of it. But for COVID, it's like, I'm stressed, I'm fearful, I'm anxious, I'm angry, I have guilt for not wanting to go expose myself at work today. The tapping helps so much with that. And it's been really, really cool to see how that has affected people and made people feel better during this crazy time. So I love it. It's like a spot cleaner. It gets deeper stuff too, but it's a really nice spot cleaner. Whereas the meditation is this general cleansing of stress, but not specific. It just kind of shifts your whole physiology towards stress reduction. But the tapping's like episodic spot relief. Really spot cleanser, which I love.
Yeah. And that's the whole, like all the techniques that I'm doing. It's like, I love meditation. I do it every day. But then the spot, like when you stress suddenly hits, like there's like these little things that you can learn quickly and do them, and they work fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I could talk about it all day. I love it.
I know, me too. It's so great. Cool. Well, thank you so much. So jillwener.com. You're on Facebook, you're on Instagram. Anywhere else we can find you?
I'm on the Twitters. Yeah, I'm on all of it. At Jill Wener MD for Instagram and Twitter. And Facebook. I have too many pages for variations of, I had a studio one, so I opened up this page for the studio. So I post the same content pretty much on all the Facebook pages. So Jill Wener MD meditation is one you can find me at. But I think Twitter and Instagram are probably going to give you more.
Okay. Is that Jill Wener for Twitter and Instagram? Jill Wener MD?
Jill Wener MD, yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, that was an awesome interview with Dr. Jill Wener. I love her. She's amazing. If you want to check her out, definitely check her out. So here's just a quick review of what we talked about in this lesson. What it is that it's acupressure points that reduce stress. We went through a drill early on of where the different points were and practice where each tapping point is. There's the science of it where the cortisol levels drop, and then also you have some brain changes that confirm those physiologic effects of dropping stress. And then we did the interview with Dr. Jill Wener. For your happiness bonus on this lesson, we're going to go through past, present, and future. What I want you to do is just take a random piece of paper and jot down a couple, or even just in your head, think of 3 difficult things that you have overcome and reflect on how these things have helped you. And then in the present moment, think of what rituals are not making you happy. What experiences do you crave? And the bottom line of this is to think of what feels stale in your life. What rituals do you not like? Perhaps it's every night after dinner, I sit down with a 6-pack of beer and I drink it while watching Netflix. Maybe that's a ritual that's not making you happy. And maybe that is not an experience you truly, truly crave. So how can you change that to schedule in more fun and schedule in something that, okay, tonight after dinner, I'm going to do something else entirely that is more spontaneous. And then think about your future. List out what you're looking forward to, maybe in your mind or even in a conversation. What is something you look forward to in 1 week, 1 month, and 1 year, and in 10 years? The more detail, the better. You could even post this on Facebook and make it a challenge for you and your friends. This week, I'm looking forward to this, this, and this. And then in 1 week, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How about you? And maybe get some inspiration from other people as well. Okay, so thank you so much, and on to the next lesson. Download the course materials at stressreleasesurvivalguide.com.